Apella wants to be a governor in the Klingon Empire. Nona believes Tyree never grew, and you can't kill a computer. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton and Walter Koenig.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Original Series, episode 219, that's season 2, episode 19, entitled A Private Little War, story by Don Ingalls as Judd Crucis, teleplay by Gene Rodenberry, maybe you've heard of him, directed by Mark Daniels. This was February 2nd, 1968. Where were you? And how you guys doing today?
Great.
Cool. Everybody, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate that. And visit us at patreon.com/the7th-rule to support the show. We'd really appreciate that. All right, first things first. Walter, before we hit record, you said you recognized the guy that played Tyree, Michael Whitney, but you don't know where from.
No, I don't. I mean, he looks familiar. I mean, once I get past the hair, quote unquote. No, I thought he was okay. I thought he was okay. I have some fairly strong feelings about this show.
Oh, thank God. Let's get into it.
Well,
what are your strong feelings?
Well, this is the only time I've ever experienced orgasmic therapy.
Okay.
Nancy Kovac, bless her heart, she's beautiful. But give me a break. I mean, I hold the director responsible, and I work with Mark, or rather, I was in episodes that he directed. I don't ever remember him giving me a comment, but a comment should have been offered here. Some direction should have been offered. This was so freaking over the top sex. You know, there was nothing subtle about what she did. She's beautiful. She's absolutely gorgeous, but there's nothing subtle about what she did. And I kept thinking, you know, if they had cast somebody like Shelley Long, who had been in Cheers, the blonde, and played it totally against type, so that she wasn't being sexual all the time, but you got this beautiful face, and there's an innocence there, and that's the magic, that they're from a place where they can look innocent and be extraordinarily sexual and passionate. I really thought that they should have, and I don't blame her. I don't blame Nancy Novak. I feel that she should have had guidance and been told to play against what they wanted her to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of was all right with it, Walter. I wasn't bothered by her performance, really. It was slightly over the top. I mean, I get what you're saying. But I also feel like as a period piece, something of the time, it reflects the kind of on-screen, characters that I'm kind of used to seeing a little bit. The Cleopatra type characters that was played by Elizabeth Taylor, a seductress, someone who's a seductress, a witch doctor. I felt like that was also critical to her character, just the fact that she knew all these spells and ways to either entrance people, heal people. And then the other aspect of why I excused it and kind of looked the other way was because this was technically like a primitive, almost like caveman society of people. And so because of that, I thought, okay, that's excused because this particular group of people, the Kanatu or whatever she was, uh, I felt like, well, yeah, Kanutu.
Yeah.
Maybe
right.
maybe they are a group of people that use their sexualization to manipulate and get the outcomes that they desire. So I excused it to some degree. I understand what you're saying about the over the top performance because I did think some of it was, but she's so beautiful,
Yeah.
and it's so convincing that somebody would fall for her in that kind of a way. And it didn't throw me off too much.
Well, the problem is I'm looking at it now from the sensibilities that I have in
Right.
this age. And I'm sure I would not have been as critical back in the day, as you point out. That was a different way of seeing things. But I mean, part of the criteria for good theater, film, whatever, is does it stand up? Does it hold up after all these years? And I mean, there should be a universality and a feeling of this is always going to be great, And I've seen performances like that. I remember watching Frederick March and thinking, I saw him back in the 40s and 50s, and he was brilliant then, and he was still brilliant when I looked at it all those years later. So I get what you're saying, and I am seeing it in a different way now.
And just to add to that, because I don't want to harp on this, but I do think that this teleplay was written by Gene Roddenberry, and I believe that this is the kind of character. Excuse me. I believe that this is the kind of character type that Gene Roddenberry wanted to visualize. I think that to some degree.
Oh, he definitely wanted to visualize this character type. Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, this is something in his wheelhouse, right? This kind of a character that is a seductress, and these are the things that he finds appealing in women, and so you can see that a fingerprint of his own desires and expectations of women. I felt like we're in this script somehow, like intertwined.
Well, the other thing that I had remembered from this show and changed actually for the better, watching it again, was that philosophy of balance of power and the idea that the Klingons were providing these people with weapons, and so we had to provide them with weapons. And I only remembered it that way. I didn't remember that there was some insight into the danger here as the story progressed. And I think the most telling moment and the most trenchant moment in the story is when Michael puts the rifle to his eye, and it's about to shoot, and then says no. There's a point where you got to stop weaponizing. You got to stop. I mean, we were engaged at the time in who has the best bombs, who the Russians or the Americans. We went from atomic bombs to hydrogen bombs. It was bizarre. It was a terrible situation, and I didn't remember that it was the ultimate statement was you can't, in the story, was you can't keep doing this, and I applaud that. Now that I see it again.
I think that applaud it. Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
No, I felt like that was also the meat of the story here, and it jumped out at me as well. And interestingly, I know everybody thinks of whatever they think about when they hear those words, and it triggers the brain to fire in different ways. But for me, when I heard that, I thought of the headline that's currently in the news, and it has been for the last few years, and that is Ukraine and Russia. And I look at the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and I feel like in that instance, you have an imbalance of power. And so you see the international community gathering together to make sure that Ukraine has the proper power to defend itself. And so then I look at it like in those terms, like, yes, you think war is bad. Yes, arming people is bad. But at the same time, it may be ultimately the only way those people survive.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. That certainly makes sense. But tell me if I'm wrong, and I may well be wrong. My feeling was there was an inference that it was going to continue to escalate. That if we gave them better weapons, the Klingons would give them better weapons, and it would keep going on and on. And that way lies destruction, annihilation. Can only end that way. So was that in there, or was I inferring it?
That was the inference, but it was fairly subtle, because I don't think that side of the argument really got pushed home enough. Because from my layman's point of view, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, hey, if the Klingons are going to, make this an unfair battle and, let the village people have these bigger and better weapons and improvements, so they could just slaughter these other seemingly innocent people, then it almost feels like an obligation that you need to help to protect them. Either you protect them or you give them means to protect themselves and at least make it even and a fair fight. And that was pretty well stated throughout the episode. But what was not was the other side of the argument, which is, to what end? And I think personally, I feel like that argument needs to be stated more, because that's the less obvious one. The more obvious answer is to help them to protect themselves. The less obvious side of the argument are the negative repercussions to it. So I came away thinking like, yeah, let them protect themselves, because the other side wasn't really presented much or well. What do you think, Sirach?
Okay, so I'm not...
No, you're not crazy. And as a matter of fact,
not yet,
Walter, Dr. McCoy was suggesting as much as what you're describing. McCoy was saying this is going to just continue to escalate until we have a world war situation.
He was the voice of reason. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. And this is where I feel, I know this is a segue to some degree, but the next generation comes in with a Picard captain prototype. And where I feel Picard differs from Kirk is Picard uses more diplomacy instead of taking action. So I feel like Picard in this situation would have tried to have a conversation with the Klingons, describing, to them that this is not a beneficial situation, and making an argument on morality, and influencing cultures. And I think Picard would have handled it in that way more so than Kirk handling it in the way that he did, which is let's just arm these people. I think Picard would have tried a diplomatic way of, let me see if I can talk to these people, reason with the Klingons, or reason with the Apella guy, or let's see if we can come to some terms of what is best for everybody here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, so I believe that this was an allegory to, it's got to be Vietnam, right? Not because, it's pretty clearly, a strong allegory to Vietnam, not just because of the subject matter, but also because of the timing of it. This was 1968. But also, this has been going on throughout history, including, as you guys mentioned, Russia versus Ukraine. How many discussions have we had about, well, how much can we help Ukraine to fight back? And then it's going to keep raising the stakes. So again, in this episode, I didn't really feel like I was presented both sides of the argument well enough to where I felt satisfied. I didn't, like I like when an episode presents both sides of an argument. Doesn't matter which side wins. I just want to hear both sides so that I can understand it and see what the dilemma is. I just feel like both sides could have been a little better presented. I mean, helping them defend themselves was pretty clear and obvious. But yeah, I agree with Sirach. Like Picard or somebody else, the episode would have been about how to address it, like talking with the Klingons and saying, hey, you can't do this. And because that's the real villain right there, is the Klingon. Right. And the real villain doesn't even get addressed. The puppet master, they hide from it. The man behind the curtain. Yeah, like we don't even, nothing happens. And I didn't even, to be honest, I wasn't even sure I understood the very end, which was when he says, hey, reproduce 100 flintlocks. And he's like, what? And he says, serpents for the Garden of Eden. We're very tired, beam us home. And I was left thinking, wait, so did he change his mind at the end there, or does he mean it? Like, are they really replicating the 100 flintlocks? It sounds like that's what they're doing.
They're replicating the 100 flintlocks. They are replicating the flintlocks.
So that's the direction they're going.
Yeah, and what Rodenberry is saying in his writing there is that weapons, that
destroy the Garden of Eden, right? I got that.
But take somebody's life,
But then he kind of says, "We're very tired. Take us home," almost as if saying, never mind. But he did mean like they're going to arm these guys and make it a fair fight, right? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I got from it, but. Again, they did avoid some of the real issue. We can see that this is about a pacifist who doesn't want to have a violent approach. He wants to. Violence is against his fiber of his being. And what essentially we see throughout the transition of this episode is that his core changes, and he believes now in violence because something so traumatic as watching his wife get murdered,
right,
activated the violent side of him. And I think that's another allegory about all of us having not all of us, but most of us having some side of us, whether it's deeply buried or it's at the surface, that is capable of killing somebody or harming someone, right? And as much as you want to be a pacifist, if you see somebody commit some horrible thing against some of your loved one, it's going to activate that instinctual nature that we have to want to exact revenge. And I think that's another kind of message that this story was trying to convey, was the element of revenge. Walter, you were saying something there?
It's really good, Sirach, very observant. And we should commend them for letting Kirk be that way. Letting Kirk want revenge, want to get back, because that's so human. Mm-hmm. And it's nice having somebody like Bones, there to contrast and to support the opposing argument. So as you talk, I see more merit in this story than I had initially. I commend them for allowing that weakness to be part of our hero. It's human. It's very human, and that's one of the things that Bill brought to the character. He brought fallibility. Emotional. He brought great anger and when required. And I think that's what people really, even if they couldn't identify it, if they couldn't label it, that's what they were really responding to. That he was them he was the audience, but just bigger. Just, he was in charge. So I think that's great. Yeah. Congratulations on your observation.
And to add to that, what you just said, Walter, the other thing is he's like the audience, except he's fearless. I think all of us are held back by a level of fear of what our, actions and consequences and repercussions. And you see Kirk is a fearless character. He's like, regardless of whatever my decision is going to, invoke or whatever the repercussions are, he mentions he's going to disobey Starfleet. I'm going to violate orders. So he's stating his, purpose right away. And that's a fearlessness that I think Kirk embodies more than any other captain. It's sometimes it gets him in trouble. A lot of times it gets him in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
But it also shows a fallibility, a humanness side of him. He's really the star of this show in every way that possible. He the lead of this show.
We've also seen, and I don't want to digress too much. We've also seen other qualities in Kirk that most leading actors will not touch, and that's ambition, and there's a kind of jealousy we see in the first Star Trek movie, and in one of the episodes as well. So even though we were rooting for him, we relate to him because we've experienced those things as well, not in the proportions that he has, but still we can identify with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part Bill, and that's part the writing.
And one other thing to add to that, vulnerability. He is one of the most vulnerable captains we have. He exposes himself in a way where he shows you that he's flawed in moments or he's weak in moments.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the great things that Mr. Shatner does is in his performance. He gives you a captain who's not only brave, courageous, strong, fearless, but also at times vulnerable,
Yes.
Slightly, weak or helpless. And he covers the whole spectrum when it comes to that.
Yeah. So
sorry, Ryan, you were going to say something.
No, not at all. Yeah, and then just to reiterate that, like what you were saying, Sirach, about how Kirk is the audience. He's absolutely our point of view. The show would not work if we had Bones's point of view, right? That character can't be a main character, and Spock certainly cannot, because they are meant to be the voice of reason, or almost like the antagonist within, like the guy that says, no, we can't do that because, or, whatever.
Yeah, the little devil's on your shoulder, right?
Right,
There's the angel on the shoulder, the devil on the shoulder, and that's what their
job, that's what their role is. Now, they're very good at it, and they're much more than just that, but that's their role, and that's why, when we're watching this, it's very clear that we're watching it from Kirk's point of view, more so than really any of the other Star Trek series. He is us. He's our voice. And the other people tell us why we can't do something. And sometimes they're right. And sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes Kirk says, Spock, you're right. But usually Kirk is the guy saying, see, I told you. I told you. I'm glad we did it my way.
And I want to highlight something that Gene Roddenberry did in this episode that I think is a direct conversation from Gene's mouth to the audience that he's entertaining. There's a line that he says, and it comes from Dr. McCoy, and it's reflective of what Gene's worldview is. He says, this man believes in the same thing we believe in, that killing is stupid and useless. So when he says this man believes in the same thing we believe in, he's telling us, the audience, what we believe in, as in Star Trek, as in the mission of the captain and McCoy and Spock. We believe that killing is stupid and useless, right? And so I think that was one of the big things that he kind of talks to the audience with, because I think that gives us an insight on Gene Roddenberry's own life experience in the military and serving. He served in the military. He's watched, he's been in war. And I'm sure when you experience something like that, you come out of it thinking about, why are we doing this, and what's the meaning behind it, and why did these people have to die, or why did I have to do this, or you start questioning things. And I believe that one of the things Gene came out of his experience was the futility and uselessness of just killing people for no reason.
Mm-hmm. War, good God, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. We're going to take our break. It's a song, Walter. I didn't do it justice, though. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back on the seventh rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Sir Rock Lofton and Walter Koenig. All right. Here are the Trivioids of the week, of the episode. Bones pronounces roots as roots. Captain Kirk is worried about Spock. Dr. Mbenga interned on a Vulcan ward. If the Klingons are breaking the treaty, it could be interstellar war. The Hill people are compassionate and gentle. Men seek the Kanutu women because through them they become great leaders. Nona believes Tyree never grew up. Apella wants to be a governor in the Klingon Empire, and you can't kill a computer. Walter, you said during the break that you're compelled to say some things that maybe are a little less important. And we said, well, that's what this second segment's all about. Like, for example, Bones pronouncing roots as roots. And then I heard Kirk say root.
He's an old
too.
Southern boy, and I think maybe that's where he gets it from.
Yeah, that's the South.
I had to listen to it like 3 times because it felt so weird in my ear hearing someone say, it's a root. I'm like, stop saying it that way. But anyway, I'm sure that's a thing. I've heard other people say that. It's just kind of weird. So what do you got, Walter?
Well, my computer stopped in the middle of the episode, and I had to go back and watch part of it twice. And I picked up on a moment when Nancy starts to hit Kirk, and then they cut away.
Mm-hmm.
As she's hitting him, they cut away. And I didn't understand that at all. I mean, what was that a mistake? That they should have either let her hit him completely, or cut that out, because I don't think it's referred to again. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we also had Nurse Chapel hitting Spock, and it turned away to not show her hitting Spock, but it let the Doctor hit Spock, which was weird. Like, it showed Dr. Mbenga hitting Spock, but it did not show Nurse Chapel hitting Spock. It showed her rearing up to do it, but it didn't actually show, the stunt with it. But yeah, I don't know. Sirach, what do you think?
FCC rules: a woman can't hit a man on TV unless
back in the 60s, maybe.
I don't know. I have no idea, but I did see it though. I saw what you talked about.
The other thing is, and I don't know how to really talk about this because it was a different era and there was less sophistication in what they could do. But that stuffed white puppy with the points on its back, I mean, give me a break. That was about as scary as pudding.
Yeah, I also noticed that in the subtitles, it was Mugato, Mugato, but the way they kept pronouncing it was Mugatu, and that's another thing where I'm like, it says Mugato, but he's saying Mugatu. But that's kind of like a running joke within Star Trek, is that they always pronounce that particular alien differently, like Mugatu, Mugato, Mugato, Gamato, like apparently it's
Pull the
been,
whole thing off.
yeah.
Well, you know what they say: tomato,
Mugato,
tomato,
Gamato,
mugato.
yeah. And a series, Lower Decks, more recent series, had an entire episode basically where they were mispronouncing or pronouncing it differently. That specific alien with the spikes on it. I mean, it was just like a white gorilla costume, right? With
it was so much a costume. It was
it
so
was such a
much
costume.
a costume. I thought we could do better, even in the 60s. I thought they could do better than that.
Well, I used to see the Mugatu every time I would ride the Matterhorn at Disneyland. Right when you go through that one
the
part.
Yeti. The Yeti, yeah. I like that.
Exactly.
I actually like that ride. That's the fun one. It's kind of
But
like
yeah,
there's also a dog with little spikes on it too in an episode. But anyway, what were you saying?
No, I thought that Walter also called out one of my biggest pet peeves, which was the hair. I was like, why does their hair have to look so bad? These obviously were toupees, and they were just so badly worn.
They were.
It was the 60s. Hey.
Wow. Even my hair that I wore several shows wasn't as bad as that.
That was bad.
This one was the worst right here.
They got bows and arrows and bad toupees. I mean, this is...
I also noticed that they had like slacks on and stuff like that. So I'm like, they're not really that much in the Stone Age if they have like cool slacks and whatever. But, you know, a lot of this has to do, of course, with the amount of time that the production has to put things together, the amount of funding, you know, that they have, the budget, whatever. So, you know, all that stuff, I guess, is basically forgivable. And they had the little thing on their forehead, whatever that was. I don't think they explained that.
You know, I have to give them credit, though. I thought they fit a lot of stuff in this one episode. I really enjoyed the fact that they introduced a lot of new characters to us. They introduced an entire planet to us. And within a short time, we got a lot of storyline. It wasn't even halfway through the episode where Spock was going to die, and Kirk is about to die. So you've got in the same episode your two leads halfway through, both life in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this episode's moving quickly. Like, how are they going to wrap all of this up in 1 hour? And so I thought they gave us a lot of story in one episode. And so to that, I credit the writing and directing. I thought it was pretty good to be on. Yeah.
I was going to say it was nice to see that Majel had something to do.
Yes.
We got a sense of her feelings for Spock, which we generally didn't get that opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was nice. I thought it was nice and she had a couple of nice moments, I thought, when she was alone and she was commenting to herself, you know, pantomiming sort of, and I thought it was well done. It was well done.
And then what about when she's finally slapping Spock and then Scotty comes in and pulls her away like a crazy person? Like, yeah, that's so
woman,
messed up.
What are you doing, woman?
Yeah, he's like dragging her away, calling her woman. And then Dr. Mbenga just comes in. He's like, no, this is cool. Just slap him around. And he's like, well, I guess it's okay if you do it. I don't know. It's just the whole thing was weird. I felt bad for her. I'm like, the guy told her, do whatever he says. I mean, clearly wink, wink to the audience to let the audience know something zany is about to happen. Spock is about to ask her to do something wild.
And the way she said it, because he said, do whatever he wants. And she's like, do whatever he says? The way she said it was like, what if he asked for something, you know? So, I thought that was a funny delivery.
There was a slight, maybe imagined undertone there. Yeah, where it was just kind of like, she's like, whatever he wants. I'm like, all right, everybody, relax. Just but then of course, slapping him around is pretty extreme too. So who knows? What did you think, Walter? Yeah. Did you enjoy seeing Spock get slapped around?
So I contributed something to this episode.
You did?
That nobody was aware of. The gentleman who played the primitive who was like kind of middle-aged, who comes in and talks to the Klingon.
Yes.
Brought him onto the show. He
Oh,
was my
cool.
professor. He was my
Appella.
professor at UCLA. His
Oh,
name,
wow.
his real name is Arthur Friedman. His stage name is Arthur Bernard. And I brought him down to the set and I introduced him to the casting directors and they cast him. It was the only time I was ever able to get anybody on the show. But I felt good about that because this man was totally instrumental in my becoming an actor. I was a psychology major at UCLA. I took one acting course. He taught it, and he was the one that talked me into going back to New York and studying drama. And he wrote a letter to the neighborhood playhouse on my behalf. So I always felt good. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but I felt good about the fact that I was able to help somebody get work,
That's a really good
Wow.
story, Walter. I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
Arthur Bernard, and you said what was his real name?
Arthur Friedman.
Mm-hmm. And so did you call him up originally and just say, hey, I mean, how did this kind of come about?
Yeah.
I don't know I don't remember the circumstances. I know I brought him down and I was with him and I introduced him to Joe DiAugusta. And at that point, Ernie Loso was also assisting Joe. And they responded to him and I don't think it was immediately, but, within a couple of weeks, they found a role for him and they brought him on the show.
That's great.
Did that happen a lot, Walter, with you? Did a lot of people want you to get them into acting or introduce them to people? Was that something that
I tried? I wasn't very successful. I was the new kid on the block, and I was the new kid on the block with Babylon 5, and as well as Star Trek. I couldn't get my wife onto Star Trek. In 1967, we'd been married 2 years, and I just didn't feel I was in a position to do that. I was still, a marginal character, and I didn't feel I had any enough importance to suggest it. I did suggest it for the movies, and Judy did do a couple of the films. Judy Leavitt, my wife, did do a couple of the films. There were small parts, but she got to work in them.
Yeah. That's really honorable of you to pay back, or pay forward the opportunity that you were given and try to get other people a chance to work. I think that's a characteristic of a good person and a good actor.
Mm-hmm.
So I commend you for that. Do you remember anything about this Dr. Mbenga character, this black doctor who guest starred in this episode, which eventually became a spin-off character on the new Star Trek Strange New Worlds? Do you remember working?
Yeah, Walter,
Yeah.
This character that was introduced in this episode and came back for only one more episode, so he was in 2 in total. There's a currently running Star Trek series called Strange New Worlds, in which Dr. Mbenga is the lead. He's it's the same Doctor character, and he's one of the leads. And so this was the episode where this character was created, because Bones was going to be on the planet, and they probably needed something more than just Nurse Chapel there. And so he ended up coming back for a second episode and then is a lead in a new series. Do you remember anything about him initially?
Do I have what?
Do you remember anything about
because you weren't in any scenes
Booker
with
Bradshaw?
him,
No, I wasn't in any scenes with him. No.
Never met him?
The scenes he had 2 scenes, and they were both with the Klingon. By the way, I have a comment about the Klingon makeup, which probably nobody else supports. I thought it was more organic in this episode and more reasonable than what they did to him when they started doing Next Generation and the movies. I mean, that to me was costume and makeup. This was somebody who looks different than us, not so different, but just different enough to make it believable that such a race did exist. I never thought about that before.
So you're not a
That's what
fan of the big prosthetic turtle
Yeah,
shells on the
yeah.
Klingon heads?
It's interesting, guys. While we're talking, I'm thinking about, and I think you brought this to my attention, Sirach. There's a danger in looking at this stuff and critiquing it 60 years later.
Always.
And to feel superior to what we see. Maybe it isn't fair to look at it from the point of view we have now, with what we can do now with all the pyrotechnics and electronics and everything else. Maybe it isn't fair to put it down, to criticize it. I mean, if we could only, and I'm not totally capable of doing it, but if we could only view this now as if we were still back in the day, and make our judgments as to what was available then. I cannot help but let what is available now influence my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree, Walter. But I also will say that one of the reasons Star Trek remains timeless is because of the themes that they address and discuss. Even though the makeup and the special effects and all of that stuff will evolve over time, the root discussion of war and peace, of love, and all of these things that are addressed in Star Trek, of embracing people, of all of these ideas that we talk about. I think that's what makes it timeless. We're not looking at it for the special effects or for the the costuming and whatnot. Those are the things that enhance it and make the story better. But ultimately, the root of what they're leaving behind is what is the discussion based on. And to me, that is why it's timeless, because these themes are always going to be. Look, we just talked about Ukraine and Russia. This is a modern day. This is a 2020, 2020s issue,
right?
And this was written in 1960 something, and therefore, something that's written in 1960 something to this very day still holds water, still holds true. We arm people so that they can defend themselves. These kinds of imbalances in technology exist. Now the imbalances in drone technology. This particular group has drones and all kinds of artificial intelligent warfare, and now these people have to raise their ability to compete on that same kind of war playing field. And so the imbalance of power still exists to this day. We still find ourselves trying to keep up and trying to equalize the playing field. I also thought the discussion of balance of power in itself is important to talk when it talks about the development of humankind. If one group has all of the power, then we have a place where we can see subjugation, we can see corruption on a mass level. But when there is a balance of power, when there is a superpower here and a superpower there, then we have to have some kind of middle ground of agreements. It can't be just your way or no way. And I think that's important also for stability in the world.
Yeah, you always need a counterbalance. And that's why a lot of people actually back in the day when the USSR crumbled, a lot of people said that's actually not necessarily a good thing, because the USSR, good or bad, served as a counterbalance to the United States. And then once the United States was the only superpower left, there's nobody keeping the United States in check. There's nobody, regardless of who's good or who's bad, there's nothing, there's no yin to that yang. And now you don't have balance on the planet. But yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Sirach, about the themes that are timeless. If you find the right theme, which Star Trek always did, we know history repeats itself. And so 50 years from now, people could be watching this episode and saying, that's just like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan or whatever, like whatever that time frame has. So yeah, we see that over and over again in Star Trek. And I think that's one of the biggest, most important things going for this show. What do you think, Walter?
No, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. So let's.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about a few things just since we only have a few minutes
Yeah,
left.
let's do it.
I wanted to talk about Don Ingalls, the writer, the story, creator of the story.
Yeah.
Rodenberry did the teleplay, but the story was actually written by Don Ingalls, who didn't want his name to appear in this episode.
Yeah, Judd Crucis.
Why is that?
He had a beef with what Gene Roddenberry did with the rewrite on this episode.
Oh, well, that sounds,
yeah.
So this episode originally was a critique on Vietnam, and it took a very strong position of peace. And you can see in the rewrite, Gene Roddenberry kind of wrote it in a way where what has to be done, and we have to arm people, and it took the onus away from the peace element that Don Ingalls was trying to write in this story.
It shows too. It shows. That's why I didn't know this, and that's why I was saying it feels like it didn't present the other side of the argument as well as I would have expected. That's probably why the original story by guy was like, I don't really like the way this went.
But there certainly is enough towards the end of the story to make us side with the idea of let's have peace and not war. There's still enough there, and it's so curious to me that I didn't remember any of that. I only remember the armaments. Everybody was building up armaments, and how it was such a comment on what was transpiring in the real world. So it's refreshing to watch it again and see in a humanitarian aspect to this story I didn't remember.
Yeah, I think that the theme was still played out. I know that Don Ingalls didn't like the rewrite, but I think the rewrite served the purpose of making the debate something worth having. And I also thought that it was interesting that Don Ingalls, instead of using his real name, chose to use this particular pseudonym, which is, Ryan, it's Judd
Crucis or Crucis? Crucis?
Judd Crucis, which means justice of the cross in Latin.
Mm-hmm.
So in some way, Don Ingalls.
How do you know that? I mean,
I did all this research for this episode because I thought it was interesting.
Good for you.
Well, I went down a rabbit hole of information, and here's the rabbit hole. Don Ingalls and Gene Roddenberry worked together at the Los Angeles Police Department. They are both veterans. They both flew B-17s. So when they were working together at the police department, they both said they wanted to become writers one day. And Don Ingalls ended up leaving the police department to become a writer before Gene Roddenberry. But he didn't have the kind of success Gene Roddenberry had once he decided to leave. However, he did have success, and he wrote on several different shows.
Fantasy Island, T.J. Hooker, etc.
T.J. Hooker, Fantasy Island, yes. And Gene Roddenberry, because he knew him and they worked together prior to them both becoming writers, gave an opportunity for Don Ingalls to write a couple of episodes of Star Trek. And that's where the connection goes. So they have a past history of both being veterans, both flying B-17s, both working for the LAPD together, and both becoming writers at the same time period. So I thought that was interesting.
That is really cool. One of the biggest ones he did was Have Gun, Will Travel. That's a legendary show. Good stuff, Sirach. All right, let's talk about very quickly. What do you got, Walter? You're going to say something.
This is an additional comment that is not terribly important. I knew a writer named Shimon Winselberg. You may not know that name, but he wrote one of the Star Trek episodes, and he chose to use a pseudonym. And I would love to know which one it was, and if it was one that you're going to show here, I'd be interested to look at it from the perspective of somebody who took his name off an episode. Yeah,
I know just the person to ask, and we're going to see him in like 5 minutes, right, Sirach?
Yeah.
Watch,
Yeah.
we'll get your answer in 5 minutes.
Okay.
This is going to be good. This is great stuff. Great stuff today. Let's talk about the home run of today's episode. Sirach, who do you think gets the home run of today's episode?
I think that I would give 2 home runs, actually. I got one for Dr. McCoy, because I thought he did a fantastic job in this episode. His facial expressions, I thought he was the thread that carried throughout the episode, the through line. He was the voice of reason. He was talking Kirk out of going crazy. And I just loved his performance, his facial expressions, his reactions. I thought were 100% on. So Dr. McCoy on camera gets the home run for me. And behind the camera, I like what Mark Daniels did in this episode. I did a little research on Mark Daniels, and Mark Daniels directed the first 38 episodes of the I Love Lucy show. All 38 of the first 38. And so he is responsible, Mark Daniels, the director, is responsible for the 3-camera filming era, where you have 3 cameras in a sitcom filming different things. Prior to that, it was a 1-camera show, 1-camera operation, like the Honeymooners and stuff like that. But Mark Daniels pioneered the 3-camera directing style in television. And so for that, I give him tremendous credit, as well as what he did in this episode. So Mark Daniels gets a home run too.
Quite a tie-in too with the fact that he directed Lucy, and Lucille Ball was the person that kind of saved Star Trek, as they say. So there's a really good connection there. Walter, who gets the home run of today's episode?
Well, I say DeForest as well. I applaud that he had the opportunity to be so central to the story. I have a sidebar about Mark Daniels. We both knew the same young lady, and I will not elaborate on that. And also, for a long, he directed every other episode in the second season. Joe Pevney and Mark Daniels directed all the episodes in the second season. And my feeling for several of the first episodes that I was in was this guy just didn't like me, because he never smiled. He was totally, I felt, oblivious to my presence. And then we did I Mud, and I had a couple of funny lines, and he had a big, broad smile. And I said, okay, I'm just being paranoid. I'm not going to get a lot from him, but if he didn't like what I was doing, he probably would have told me. I hope he would have told me. Anyway, so yeah, okay, let's go with the positive thing, the forest.
I'm going to go with the guy that came up with this story, Don Ingalls. I thought that this was a great idea. I feel like we all have thoughts on how it was executed well, how it was executed poorly, what we could have changed, what we liked. But the nugget, the idea was there. It's a great allegory. It's a theme that plays on forever, and it's something that we can still talk about intelligently almost 58, 59 years later, and will continue to for another 100 years or more. And then after the research that Sirach did to tell us a bit more about him, that just solidifies it for me that Don Ingalls gets the home run of today's episode. Here are some other home run hitters. Their names are Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman-Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosvi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Chris Sternett, Greg K. Wickstrom, Cassandra G., Mark Zutkoff, Chris Garris, Linda Page, and Steve Case. Of course, don't forget the guy we're going to ask in a minute. Yes, sir. Joe Bugbuster. Jason M. Oken as well. He'll be on the other side. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Joe Bugbuster's back. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Sirach Lofton and Walter Koenig. It is the free-for-all right now. You did it with Melissa Longo.
Yay!
Jason M. Oken is here with a cool background.
Hi, everybody.
Mark Zutkoff has the 3 best pictures of the month, as always. Chuck A. has the best wall of the year. Cool shirt. Allison Leach Hyde's got a cool shirt, too. Look at that. That's a Melissa maker. Or made by. TJ Jackson Bay, sporting the Enterprise, in the Enterprise. Chris Garris is here as well. He's got a background nobody else has. That's cool. Always check. Faith Howell has a Gamato behind her, as does Carrie Schwentz, got 2. And Chris McGee is the Dark Lord.
Salutations.
All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I remember everybody here except Faith. Have you been on?
She's our heart.
Okay, chalk it up to...
I have been, but I think, Walter, you were distracted by my son Thomas whenever I've been on recently. So,
Okay.
And Ryan was about to sing "Faith in the Heart."
No, I wasn't, but I was hearing it. I was hearing it in my head, though. That's all I listen to in my head all day long. What do you got, Sirach? Scale of 1 to 10.
I got this at a high 7s. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and give it an 8. An 8.0.
Does anybody else have any guesses as to what the users of IMDb rated this as a weighted mean? Yeah.
7-1.
Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
if they gave it less than a 10, they were wrong. So
I'm with Sirach on this one.
7.6.
7.7.
Everybody's, I know what it is, so I can't say anything.
Same.
How do you know?
Because I looked it up.
The same way we're going to give you the answer right now. 6.7.
What?
6.7 was what it's got. If you guys feel differently, go to IMDb and give it your score, and it'll boost it up or drop it down based on that. Now, of course, they do something called like a weighted mean. So let's check that real quick. See if that's any different, because sometimes it changes it by a couple.
Walter got the closest with 7.1.
He sure did.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like so the unweighted mean, as in the actual truthful average before IMDb goes in and tinkers with it with the weird calculus that they have, is a 6.9. So that is higher. So IMDb kind of, I don't know what they do or how they figure it out, but they have their weighted mean to where like they give some points have more weight.
Well, they delete all of Anne Marie's ratings, and then it just goes down.
All of her 10s. How do they not know all of her accounts?
Or maybe they take the highest and the lowest off, and then whatever's in the middle.
Yeah, they've got an explanation of it, and it's something like that. But even they give it like it's kind of vague. You know, where they go, it's kind of like that, so they can do whatever they want. Melissa, the point is, can you stay with us and tell us what you think of this episode?
It was okay. It was an okay episode. I will say that it did get a little confusing at times because there seemed to be multiple stories going on at the same time that didn't necessarily tie into each other. But I do like that in Star Trek fashion that they asked philosophical questions, and I am always down for those kind of stories that ask questions that they don't necessarily give an answer to, although they kind of did in this, but it was kind of a disgruntled answer to this. So, yeah. I did like the scene between Kirk and Bones because of that reason, because they were asking that question, and they both had valid arguments, I think, that, in the way that, and I liked that Scotty was surprised about how the captain ordering him to create more weapons for him. He's like, wait, what? Because that demonstrates that this is a peaceful society. They come from a peaceful society, and to create weapons that, for violent purposes is not in the norm, and I really enjoy that. I did have a question that I wanted to say for the answer for things left unsaid, and the question is, what was the purpose of the Klingons arming one village?
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't give one.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. I think I got an answer for that, but that will be things left unsaid. Thank you very much, Melissa.
Yeah.
Great answers and great question. By the way, it says on IMDb, the weighted mean is a calculation that adjusts raw user data to prevent manipulation, vote stuffing, and ensure fairness. The main thing is that they add more weight to, quote, reliable voters. People that vote a lot have a little bit more weight, and people that hardly ever vote have a little bit less weight, so that people can't just stuff tens and ones that don't, they're not really trusted sources. So I guess that kind of makes a lot of sense, but I don't know if I'd agree with it. Thanks very much, Melissa Longo. Jason M. Oken, first, we got a question for you real quick. This guy, Ingalls, he originally wrote it. Do you know, and he had a surname. What was the name? I already forgot. Judd Crucis, right?
Yeah, he wanted his name off the script. I mean, off the story. He was given the story credit.
Right.
Gene Rodenberry rewrote the script so much that based on the rules of the Writers Guild.
Real quick, Walter has a question. He had a friend. He wants to know Walter, what was the writer's name that you want to know which episode he wrote?
His last name was Shimmerman. And he wrote an episode, and he used the pseudonym when it went on the air.
Are you sure it was Shimmerman? I thought it was a different name when you mentioned it earlier.
Well,
are you thinking of Shimon Winselberg?
Or maybe
yes.
Winselberg. I think that was the name he said. Yeah.
Yeah, S-Bar David was his pseudonym, but based on his Hebrew name. And I believe
Mark
that was
said,
Dagger of the Mind.
Give him the name again, Mark.
Shimon Winselberg.
Yeah, that was the name you said, Walter.
That's what you're right. You're absolutely right.
That was the name. Good job, Mark.
I can't be left alone for 10 seconds.
That's why we got your back. Don't worry, we got your back.
And what was the pseudonym?
S-Bar David.
What was the episode?
The initial S and then Bar David, as in the son of David.
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
And what was the episode?
Dagger of the Mind.
Dagger of the Mind.
From first season.
Is that a first season episode?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Anyway, sorry, Jason. What do you think of this episode? Good stuff.
For this, I'm with Dorothy Fontana, who said about 30 years ago, this wasn't great, but it was, reasonably good. That was sort of her evaluation of this. And first of all, the fact that this tackles sort of this, a geopolitical theme and tries to say something, or at least tries to make us think, stands out whether you agree with the message or you don't. And I know, Walter, you weren't particularly fond of the message. At least, there's an interview on record from about 12 years ago where you basically said that maybe that's not necessarily a Star Trekian sort of solution to the problem. But at least it makes us think, it makes us talk about it, and probably not something that was very usual for the mid to late 1960s to do this off the television screens. Maybe it's a little too heavy-handed, and I think some of it has to do with Gene Roddenberry's rewrite. He really sort of put it, forward before the viewers. So it does give us something to think about. In terms of the show itself, I think it's certainly something NBC wanted at the time. You have a planet-based show, you have something shot on location, you have some action, you have some fights, you have plenty of wigs.
True that.
You're not going to wig out on us, are you?
And frankly, it looks pretty good. I think, kudos to, frankly, Jerry Finnerman. I think it looks wonderful. That cave set that was literally made of Reynolds wrap and spray painted looks pretty damn good. And so do the ship scenes. So, I mean, it was shot wonderfully. There are a couple of sort of scenes at the beginning and the end where you can see Los Angeles in the back, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah, you can see it.
Kind of unusual for Star Trek, but again, I think it explores interesting themes. So there's actually a lot to say about this, and I'd save most of it for later. But I think it's enjoyable. I think it's sort of a something that can stand as an example of what Star Trek can do. Again, whether you agree or disagree with the message. I mean, proxy wars have been going on for a long time. You can say one is going on right now. We've been involved in a lot of them. So again, it's perhaps as current as it was in the 1960s.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Thank you very much. Jason M. Oken. All right. Mark Zutkoff also has an M in his name. What do you think of this one?
This one is tough. It has some fascinating moments, to coin a phrase, but many troubling ones. Obviously, it's an analogy to the Vietnam War and the Cold War, including the concept of balance of power. Interesting that Kirk surveyed the planet 13 years earlier. This would have been 1 year after the events of The Cage with Pike and a younger Spock. Speaking of The Cage, I like the elements of Alexander Courage's music score for that pilot film that play when Nona, the Canutu woman, plies her charms on first Tyree, then on Kirk. When Spock gets shot, we see a large green stain on his tunic, indicating the color of his blood, an appropriate touch. This is only one of 2 original series episodes to show Dr. Mbenga, and he's great here, except that he's too dismissive of Nurse Chapel and doesn't give her the explanation he should have about her needing to slap Spock when he has to fight to regain consciousness. He leaves things too vague. That causes another issue when Scotty comes into sickbay, why, and pulls Chapel away. Does Scotty still have wolf in the fold issues with women? And Chapel was supposed to call Mbenga immediately when Spock spoke, but I guess she got a bit busy. And speaking of getting busy, Nona wraps Tyree around her finger, and the rest of her, with her herbs, and then does the same to Kirk, who's lucky that Tyree really didn't want to fire that flintlock, or he'd have a red stain on his tunic. Kirk and McCoy debating the plan to keep both sides equally armed was daring for the time. Kirk's line, "War isn't a good life, but it's life," seems somewhat disingenuous. War is death, isn't it? One might have expected Tyree to be killed at the end of the episode, but it was Nona whose ambitions got the better of her. Too bad she didn't know how to work the little phaser, or maybe it was just as well. And not only was the show a Vietnam analogy, but an explicit biblical one with references to the Garden of Eden and serpents. In a show without a lot of humor, my home pun of the episode is, Kirk leaves a people he tried to help Eden worse than before.
Thanks very much, Mark Zutkoff. Great stuff. Chuck A is the TNG fanatic, but he's a TOS fanatic too. Great shirt. What'd you think of it?
Really like this episode. I like the 3 main characters, Spock, Kirk, and McCoy. McCoy and Kirk's interactions on the planet were really, really good. Of course, Spock's trying to recover from the gunshot was also good with Mbenga and Nurse Chapel. I was looking at the guest list, and Nona was played by Nancy Kovac. She was an actress that did quite a bit, a lot of guest occurrences in movies and TV. And she's still around. She's 90, according to Wikipedia.
Wow.
And the Magato was Janice Prohaska. he did the Horta in season 1, and he did a couple other characters. That one was in the cage, I know. So he did a lot in the motion picture, playing in animal suits. According to Wikipedia, he was in Gilligan's Island as an ape, but he was around quite a bit. I love the interplay at the end when the Klingon came in, and he was trying to arm the villagers, and they were trying to learn how to fire the rifles, and then Tyree's reluctance to use the guns was tough for him until the end. Then he still resisted firing the gun. I thought it was a really good episode. Gosh, it's been probably 10, 15 years since I had seen it. Really liked it. I wasn't sure. I remembered the Magato, and I remembered McCoy's and Kirk's scenes, but pretty much anything else I was like watching it for the first time in a long time.
I was waiting for you to call it something other than Magato, but you just
Gamato.
Thank you.
Magato.
Yeah.
Something
Thank
like
you very
that.
much, Chuck A. Great stuff. All right. Allison Leach Hyde, she's fluent in Gamato. What do you think of this one?
It is not my favorite, I have to say, but there's a lot going on in this one. So I'm with Melissa that it's a little like so much is happening in this episode. Like we have magic. We have, I think that's kind of what gets me. That whole healing scene with Nona and Kirk was a lot to take. I'm like, okay, all right, we're doing this. And she went full bore for it. So applause for Nancy for doing that. And so I think that's where, for me, it's a little discombobulated because it is so many little things happening. I loved seeing Chapel and Mbanga. Like, it was great to see them. And this is the first time we've got Mbanga in TOS. So it's cool to see him and, getting the recognition that he is, he's there specifically for in this situation because he is a Vulcan specialist, I guess. And then so is Chapel. But what's funny is them being, that specializations of Vulcans that she didn't already know that she was supposed to slap Spock around, but they also did a little bit of alluding to that she has special feelings for Spock, and he kind of teases her a little bit too about it when he wakes up. I thought that was kind of fun. I thought Spock did a lot of teasing in this episode, which was cute in it, so I enjoyed that. Having all of the Vietnam allegory was a lot of this too. And I may have been slightly distracted by the wigs on both the hill people and the villagers. I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to, separate these people is by wigs. Got it. But it is a really fascinating thing to watch, especially how this episode ends, because this episode is the only episode in this season that doesn't have a happy ending. It ends on, we don't know what's going to happen, and we're not going to say if it's right or wrong, but this is what is happening, and we can't be here for the whole thing. So I did think it does ask really good questions about war and strife and struggle between peoples. What is the right way to do it? What is the wrong way? Did Kirk, making the balance of power, as it were, balanced, the right thing to do? And I like that they didn't give an answer in this episode, because it wasn't there to give us an answer. It was there to ask the question. And I think it did do that very well.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde. I found myself looking. There's only 30 seconds left in this episode. How are they going to button? They just didn't button it up. So that was the answer. Good stuff. Thank you very much, Allison. TJ Jackson Bay is out in Missouri. What'd you think of this one?
Interesting. It's also been a long time since I've seen the episode, and as soon as I turned it on, I have to say, Melissa, I was thinking about you a lot in this episode because of some of the conversations that we've had and the fact that we're both usually peaceful people and would choose not to fight when given the option. And so I'm watching, Tyree as he goes on his journey. And since we're talking about wigs, he goes from his journey of being who he is when Kirk, met him, this peaceful guy, to being ready to split some wigs. Yeah, I just came up with that one on the spot. But it was interesting, to watch him go on that journey and resist. As I'm watching him, when he shot the gun for the first time, and he has this kind of disgusted look on his face, like, I can't believe I just did that, and I did it well. He actually hit the target. But he's like, I'm disgusted by this thing. Like, this is not who I am. This is not who I want to be. And then, after Nona is killed, he's angry about it. So now he's ready to split some wigs. And I think, if I were going to rewrite the episode, I would rather have him kind of retain his personality just a little bit more, and so that his decision isn't made out of anger, because of the death of his wife, but because of the perceived necessity to defend his people after something like that happens, not necessarily because he's angry. And maybe that's what it was, and it's just unspoken, like a lot of things were in this episode. There were a couple of tropes, or actually ironies that I noticed, and a trope. But the trope was that I knew this guy a long time ago trope coming into the episode to establish that they had a prior relationship and why Kirk knows about this planet. I thought it was ironic in the beginning that Kirk is telling Spock about how peaceful they are and how well developed they're going to be, just before the commotion starts and they see people with guns ready to fight. And a second ironic moment that I notice is when they're in the villagers' village, and Bones say, "Wow, the only thing that would be better than this is if we had a real live Klingon here." And he walks in. Thought that was funny and ironic. But back to Tyree, I remember. At one point, he yells, "I will not kill," and I thought that really spoke well to who he is. I got a lot out of watching just Tyree in this episode, even though all of the other stuff was going on, as other people were saying. I also thought it was interesting that as firm as Kirk was about what needed to happen, at the end we see that it really isn't an easy decision for him as well when he calls up to the ship and he's tired and Scotty's asking him like, "Huh?" He was like, "Yeah, we're making 100 serpents." Like, yeah. He realizes that that he's taken away the piece of this planet that he knew, and so it again it leaves us all with the same question of, is this the right thing to do? Is it inevitable that people have to fight to develop as a society? The obvious answer I would say is no, but we only have the world around us as the only example. So is that the right answer? I don't know. The question remains.
It does. Thank you very much, TJ, Jackson, Bay Out, Missouri. Great stuff as always. Where'd Sirach go? Chris Garris is here. What's up, Chris Garris? What'd you think of this one?
Hello. Well, it's my first time to actually watch this episode, so it was all new to me today. So it's not a bad one, really. I felt it had a lot of it had some issues, I guess you could say, because you had Prime Directive style questions going on that they really weren't they were going back and forth on, because like when Kirk first sees the other ones that have the guns, he's ready to shoot him with his phaser, and Spock's like, Captain, you can't do that. He doesn't say why, but I'm thinking it's probably because non-interference. And so he stops, and then it's just so there's so many different things like that. But there was a lot of things that I actually really enjoyed, like again, first time we see Mbenga. It was interesting that we learned how that Vulcans can heal themselves. That's the first time I'd ever really seen that. Very interesting how that once they get to one point, you got to slap them back into their consciousness, which that was kind of odd. Now, when I was going through some notes and stuff, I was surprised to learn that they purposely shot a shower scene they shot a shower scene of Nona so that the sensors would focus on it and not the healing scene later on in the episode, so that they would focus on that and cut it and not worry about the other stuff. That was very surprising that they would do that like that, but they let him stay in. But also,
it's diabolic.
Yes, very diabolic. But also, I really didn't understand what the Klingons got out of this, coming and giving them weapons, and on top of that, why flintlocks? If you're going to give them weapons, give them
bow and arrow.
Well, bow and arrows,
slingshot.
Give them disruptors. Give them 23rd century weapons, and then you're done. But then again, I guess they could turn around and try and use them on the Klingons. But still, that part just made absolutely no sense. But I did like out at the end, at least the way I understood at the end, is that Kirk was ready to arm them, but then he says he stops himself and he doesn't do it, and so he's trying not to interfere as much as he can. So it's there's some things I've got more for things left unsaid that I've got questions on that. So if you want to hear those, you have to come over there. But overall, it's not a bad episode. It's just there's some plot holes in there for me that just leave you thinking.
Things left unsaid is going to get rowdy. Thanks very much, Chris Garris. All right, Faith Howell, what'd you think of this one?
I would say this is definitely top 10 most memorable TOS episodes from my childhood. There is something about Nona that is just super attractive. I mean, she looks like my Barbies. So that definitely got me. And also there's a giant unicorn teddy bear. So there's, like I'm here. I'm 5. I'm with it. So definitely this was a catchy episode for me and sticks in my memory. So anybody who's not here tonight and cannot see the chat, there's been some light discussion about how the healing root looked like poop. Let me just say that Thomas pointed that out as I was watching this afternoon, that he concurs that looked like poop. So, especially in watching it now on a much larger screen than I got to watch it as a child and remastered, it looks like poop. Sorry. I'll stop saying poop now. But yeah, it's very fun episode. I love this episode particularly because we get some more of that play between Chapel and Spock. And now that we have Strange New Worlds, I especially love seeing Mbenga in there as well. And the 3 of them together kind of made me, want to go back and rewatch last season. And then of course, the whole, it's interesting anytime we get these little pebbles of like the character's life before. So knowing that Kirk was down on this planet before, and he has these relationships with these characters from before this event is kind of fun. I definitely think there are some weird gender dynamics going on in this episode as a whole, but definitely, it's easy to kind of just say, okay, well, they had to do that. We needed to have that dynamic going on with Kirk and Nona so that we could see Tyree's challenge, with the gun at the end. And then to answer Chris's question. If you give your best weapon in the first round, who are you going to sell to in the future? So let's, baby steps. Just my thought.
Great thoughts. Thank you very much. Faith Howell. All right. Carrie Schwent. She's the crafty bear. What'd you think of this one? Did you love it?
I definitely enjoyed it. I don't really have a memory of ever having watched it before, outside of seeing clips of the slapping, which I'll get back to that in a minute. Overall, I did enjoy the episode. I loved all the outdoor stuff. I love anything shot outdoors, especially with lots of trees and things around. And it really looked like somebody had been spray painting with orange spray paint a couple of those rock faces, and they had tried to clean it off as best they could. But that was definitely orange on those rocks. And of course, I loved seeing the Gamatu looking dude in his original furry. I want to pet that fur, see how soft it is kind of form that we see again when in lower decks. I think he looks cute. I do agree that he looks like a unicorn teddy bear. I would absolutely love a stuffed version of him. Yeah, very much enjoy that. And I also loved Nona. I agree. She just has one of those sort of vibes on screen that is just magnetic. Your eye is drawn to her. She's got a presence. Her voice is fantastic. She absolutely would have fit in, I think, in any given episode of Xena Warrior Princess. She would have been a fantastic Amazon with all of the headdresses and stuff that they wore on that show. And she was also played Medea in the 1963 movie Jason and the Argonauts, which I think was around the same time as Charlton Heston and the Ten Commandments. And based on the images on IMDb that I saw, it definitely had that similar sort of look. Just those amazing costumes, amazing hair, and the pictures of her in that movie. She looks absolutely fantastic. And her character in that movie also has a little bit of the magical type ability that Nona shows in this, because she's the granddaughter of the sun god, and she's the one that helps Jason steal the golden fleece. And Chris stole my things left unsaid tidbit. I read that on IMDb and went, "Oh, very, very smart. They're using their nuggets on that." I found that tidbit very spicy, and it made me laugh. But what made me laugh even more, the single funniest thing, I think, aside from the Tribbles episode of being my favorite moment in all of the episodes that we've covered of the original series so far, is just the slapping scene. Chapel and Mbega, one after the other, trying to slap the points off Spock's ears. I was laughing so hard watching that scene. And poor Scotty coming in, because he doesn't know what's going on. He's trying to stop, so Mbega takes over and slaps him even harder, which was making me laugh even harder. And of course, it naturally inspired the brief haiku that I do haikus for TOS episodes. So that scene inspired the brief haiku for the episode. So I'll finish with that. Spock needs to wake up. I must slap him to do it. Okay, here we go.
Gotta do what you gotta do. All right, thanks very much, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear. Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel loves Bewitched, and she's up next. Welcome back, Anne-Marie. What do you think of this?
Hi. Okay, well, I just had to come on because it's an episode with Sheila, Darren's ex-girlfriend, and one of my favorites ever was my first STLV, because you'd never see in the vendor's room, and I got an autograph from Nancy Kovac, and she signed her Bewitched look.
Nice.
No. It's so cool. Oh, and it's the old Darren. But, okay. So that's why I love the episode. Also, randomly, her husband, Zubin Mehta, was walking around the vendor's room too. It's like Hunters, LA, Israel. It's like really amazing STLV moment. So Anyway, I just had to.
Great stuff. And shout out to the original Darren. Am I right? Thanks very much,
Yes.
Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel. All right. Chris McGee is the Dark Lord, but he also shows us the way sometimes. He reminded us we missed something at the beginning of the episode, which was non-appearance mentions. Did we have any non-appearance mentions? I didn't catch one. No. But I bet you've got a some kind of or some sort of. Do you, Chris?
I'll take that bet because there weren't any.
Well, how about you just tell us what you thought of this episode then?
Sure thing. Yeah, this is a darker episode than we often see on the show. And as Jason and Mark and others said, it was clearly written as an allegory for the Vietnam War and predictably the loss of innocence of the native culture that results with a proxy war like that. As such, I think it's an interesting look into the Prime Directive and whether it should be followed to the letter or to its spirit. And I appreciate it more now that I'm older and recognize that allegory and the questions they wanted the audience to ponder. Probably the one aspect of the episode that I remember most from my first time watching it, besides the Magato, was how the Klingons were only incrementally advancing the weapons technology of the villagers, and that their next improvements would include a rifled barrel. That always stuck with me for some reason. And I didn't even wonder at the time why they only did incremental changes rather than giving them disruptors immediately, for example. But after watching it the other day, like Chris Garris, I wondered why. I like Faith's explanation, but the nearest that I could figure on my own was that it was to minimize the chance that the Federation would catch on, perhaps. So it was just bad luck that they were caught red-handed. I don't know. And I had never noticed that the other doctor in the episode is Dr. Mbenga. Like so many of you, it's been so long since I had watched the original series that such a minor detail had naturally escaped my memory. But with Strange New Worlds and its memorable characters so fresh in my mind recently, I definitely caught it this time, and I was really happy when I heard it. As for my memorable quote or phrase of the episode, it was repeated a couple of times, and it's the central theme of this episode, which is balance of power.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much, Chris McGee. All right. Jake's final take. Sirach, do you have any final thoughts on today's episode?
Yeah, a few thoughts. One, I noticed that Nurse Chapel was using a futuristic spray bottle that looks exactly like a spray bottle that we have had for the last 100 years. They didn't do anything to upgrade that spray bottle. I thought that was funny. I wonder if Tyree would have been so eager to arm up and kill if he knew that his girl was taking the technology to his enemy to empower him. I just thought that little detail may have changed his mind slightly. I love the scene where Nurse Chapel's holding Spock's hand. I thought that was just a beautiful, lovely moment right there. We don't get much character development for her. And I think Majel takes advantage of the small time that she has on screen to the maximum level. And so she always takes her moments to shine. And I think Majel's just really gracious to watch and had a very lovely moment with Spock there. I just love the way she played it. Rest in peace, Major Rodenberry. When they were slapping Spock up a whole bunch, I thought of the movie Airplane when everybody's standing in line to smack that one passenger. I'm just waiting to see a line of people like, oh, I want to smack Spock too. Hold on a second. Yeah, I would have liked to see more diplomacy by Kirk. He didn't even try to reach the Klingons and talk with them and have a conversation like, what the hell are you guys trying to do? What's going on here? It was just, there was very little diplomacy, even with the other tribal leaders, to talk with them about what their agendas, goals, or whatever the hell their vision was. There wasn't not much conversation there. It was all just reactive. I thought the music was fantastic in this episode. I thought it carried it just throughout. It set the tone, it set the pace. It was just, the music was exceptional in this episode. And I think, Mark, you mentioned that. I have to second that. I loved it when Kirk said, I did not invite a debate, to everybody who was trying to chime in on what they thought should be done. And it's like, yeah, that's not what this is. This is me. This is me thinking. Not, I don't care what you guys think. That was funny. And then lastly, I'll just say, this episode reminds me a lot of the biblical story of the fallen angels, because the fallen angels, also known as the Watchers, are supposedly credited for teaching mankind certain things that became self-destructive. And a lot of the Watchers are talked about in the book of Enoch, and you get certain names like Azazel and things of that nature. And those particular fallen angels were responsible for teaching weapons to mankind and all kinds of makeup and all kinds of things to humankind. And that's how at least the biblical allegory goes. So I feel like this is a take on that. This is like, in this particular instance, Kirk and Bones and the Enterprise guys are the fallen angels teaching man the divisive evil's ways to, flourish in the world. And so I thought that was just an interesting take on kind of the biblical allegory. Obviously, Rodenberry has a lot of biblical foundation in his work. He always mentions it. They talked about the Garden of Eden openly. They always talk about it. And so from those stories, he draws these science fiction stories that I think do a fantastic job of blending in whatever the current headlines are with the allegory of biblical themes and mixing it all together into a beautiful story in which there's debate. You can debate on what you think is right or wrong, whether it's you should arm these people or not. And of course, I thought of Ukraine and Russia in this particular episode, and how we are arming Ukraine and keeping them able to defend themselves. So it's just an example for me on how this subject matter is relevant to the discussion today. And whether you agree that it's the right thing to do or not, it's still something that is currently, those decisions are being made on by world leaders all the time. So great episode for me.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more about the music, Sirach and Mark. I definitely put in my notes how much I love the music. It really stands out in this one. Walter, do you have any final thoughts on this episode before we run off?
Well, hindsight is 2020. So
Mm-hmm.
when a show, when an episode, when a picture, whatever it might be, is really, really, really good and really has vitality and profundity and sensitivity, and there's just one error, there's one mistake, there's one flaw. My tendency, and I think perhaps many people, is to focus on that, and that detracts from all the good things that were present. The Magato is the dumbest freaking alien I've ever seen. And I can't shake that out of my head. I can't shake the look. I can't shake the movement. And I keep coming back to that. And I find myself, and I have to stop myself from judging the whole, the gestalt, as they say, by the one element that is dissonant. And in my opinion, the Magato is a children's monster. It's something out of a fairy tale. It doesn't. It's never threatening. It's never fearsome. It never makes me feel uncomfortable. Other than I want to laugh. So that's my only criticism. Particularly now that I saw it a second time, I had some prejudice, as I mentioned earlier, as a consequence of my dim memory and the fact that I only remembered it as a story about balance of power and not the resolution that we got to stop. And when I saw it this time, and I'm repeating this, but I think repetition is not a bad thing in this case. The scene where the young fellow with the hair, doesn't shoot Kirk is very, very significant, because that's saying to us his wife is deeply, passionately involved in this kiss. He's a primitive sort, and yet he does not take the most basic atavistic approach that one might take. He decides to put down the gun. And that's what this story is about. So that's what I take away from it as the most positive philosophical point being made.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Walter. Totally disagree that the Magato is a silly thing. You mentioned maybe it makes you feel uncomfortable, but it's not. It's not meant to be silly. It's a very serious Star Trek alien. So just anyway, that's from a Lower Decks episode. Never mind what he was doing there. Thank you very much, everybody. Stick around for Things Left Unsaid. If you are a patron, become a patron. The Seventh Rule. That's patreon.com/the Seventh Rule. Join in the fun. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thanks very much to Chris McGee, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Chris Garris, TJ Jackson, Bayot Missouri, Allison Leach Hyde, Chuck A., Mark Zutkoff, Jason M. Oken, Melissa Longo, for myself, Sirach, Walter, Melissa, and of course, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time. And until then, always remember the seventh rule.